Hello and welcome to the Run Testers. My name's Nick and this is a review of the Nike Ultrafly. So the Ultrafly is Nike's first plated trail running shoe. It is a racing shoe built for long distances and has some elements you'll see on Nike's road shoes, but has been changed quite a lot to make it more suitable for the trails. It's quite an expensive shoe. It costs $260 in the US and £230 in the UK. It weighs in at 300 grams or 10.6 ounces, and it has an 8.5mm drop with a stack height of 38.5mm at the heel and 30 at the forefoot. So one of the key elements it has that does come from Nike's road shoes is a ZoomX midsole, but this is a different ZoomX foam to what you'll find in the Nike road shoes. It's got the same bouncy properties, but it's been wrapped in fabric, and this reduces some of the squish on the foam in that it can't spread out as much, so that makes it a little bit more stable. And it also protects the foam from abrasions on the trails, like you don't want it catching a twig and just ripping out a chunk of that ZoomX. You've got a carbon fly plate in the midsole, and the shoe is mildly rockered to create a nice fluid ride. The drop is quite a lot higher than most trail shoes at 8.5mm, and it's got a very wide design, especially in the forefoot, to help with stability. The upper is Nike's Vaporweave material. It's a fairly thin material, but it's got that kind of ripstop fabric style design, so it shouldn't rip, but it is quite thin and it doesn't really give you much protection. There's not a lot of overlays here to protect the toes and other parts of the feet when you're on the trails. Then you've got a Vibram light base outsole, which is really the big news here, perhaps with the Ultrafly. It's Nike's first collaboration with Vibram. Expect to see more of that going forward. It's a full coverage outsole with chevron-shaped lugs. They're not the deepest in the world, but they provide decent grip across a range of terrains in my experience, and they're built mainly for probably harder trails is probably the way to put it. If you're going to be heading out onto very soft and muddy fells and grassy trails, that's not really what this shoe is built for.
Okay, so in terms of fit, it's been very good for me on the Ultrafly. So much so that I've actually taken this away, kind of walked around in it, done my runs in it. It's been absolutely fine from that point of view. So, I think all day comfort, it works. I think in terms of the runs and how it's been for me, I've had mine in a UK size 8. Typically, I am a UK size 8 in Nike shoes. I think there's probably only been a couple of occasions where I've maybe wanted something a little bit, kind of maybe a little bit more space, a little bit longer, but ultimately, generally, it's been fine. Now, most of the Nike trail shoes I've tested have been quite on the narrow side. I think on the Ultrafly you definitely get something a bit more spacious up front in the toe box, and that makes sense for running kind of longer distances. You want that extra room. That's what you get here. And also, while it looks quite low volume here, I think ultimately you're getting this upper that's quite stretchy and naturally kind of allows something for you to kind of stretch in your feet and to give it a little bit of room to kind of move around when you need that. And then when you go back further in the shoe, it kind of narrows in. You get a nice kind of hold at the midfoot. I quite like how it holds there, and that kind of extends to the heel and the heel collar as well. There's a good amount of padding. It's not overly padded. It's not, I think if it went too much, it would add a little bit too much weight, and I think there's enough here in terms of what you're getting here. And you've got this kind of skinny tongue, which does have a padded element on the top of it, so if you have to pull in those laces a little bit tighter, then you're not going to feel it on the top of your foot, and I didn't ultimately, if you kind of get those laces right on top of that padded area. So for me, I had a UK size 8, it was absolutely fine, pretty happy, no issues in terms of discomfort or what I found on this upper and this fits on the Ultrafly.
I would say this definitely comes up a little bit wider than normal with Nike shoes. I am a UK 5, I run in a UK 5 in pretty much all running shoes. I go up a little bit in New Balance because they come up small. So this is a UK 5, but when I got it out of the box, I thought it felt too big. I thought I had too much room in the shoe. But I think it is just you've got this much wider toe box. So it did feel like quite roomy, but I wouldn't be tempted to go down a size in these. I think they're just designed to be roomier, and you want a little bit more space in the toe box when you're doing a trail run because you don't want your toes getting squished by rocks and roots and things on the ground.
So the fit of the Ultrafly has been very good for me in my normal running shoe size. I've got a UK 9 here, which is a US 10. That's the same size I have for all Nike shoes, and it fits me really well. It's got a lot of room in the toe box because it is so wide. Like, I've got quite a narrow foot and my foot is a little bit lost at sea in the middle of that toe box, but it hasn't actually proved a problem at all. It's not been too much room, and obviously it's nice to have a little bit of extra space in there if you're going to run very long distances in the shoe. The upper is quite noticeable. I think it does hug the foot quite a lot, and there's a lot of padding around the back of the shoe, but it didn't run too warm for me on my runs, including some very long stuff in pretty warm conditions, but it's not quite as breathable as some of the other racy uppers you'll see on trail racing shoes. Yeah, overall, the fit was good for me in my normal size. So I've done over 150 kilometers in the Ultrafly over the course of this summer, including one 50k run, and I've also done a 30k run at the end of an 80k ultra. So I used it for the last few laps of a 50-mile ultra. In that time, I've gone over a wide range of terrain. So my early running was all in the Gower Peninsula in Wales, including the 50k run, where I was on a nice mix of trails, some forest stuff, some grass, some beachy, sandy paths, a lot of sand, in fact, too much sand. Sand's not fun to run on. And then back at home, I've been running on my normal forest trails in Epping Forest, which have been pretty good and dry in the summer here in the UK. But I've been on some single tracks, some twisty, turny courses. And I also took the shoe out to Chamonix for a few runs out there on rockier stuff and rootier stuff with a lot more steep climbs and descents to test it out over there. First thing I say straight away is this does not feel like the Vaporfly or Alphafly road racing shoes. You shouldn't really come into this expecting that feeling. It's a much less propulsive and dynamic ride. It's not as squishy. It's much more stable and comfortable and a fair bit heavier too. And it doesn't really snap you through aggressively like those shoes. Comfort certainly be prioritised here, and it feels like a really clearly weighted towards ultra long distance events, this shoe. Like, it's not a trail racer that I'd say you're going to pull on and go and dash a fast 5k on mixed terrain at a park run or something like that. It feels really built for the long haul, which is why comfort and stability have been pushed so much to the fore. When you are on those very long runs though, I really have enjoyed using it. It's very comfortable, it's very supportive, it does help you tick over quite well and looks after the legs and feet really well. And all the long runs I've done in the shoe, like going, like I say, up to kind of the last 3 hours of an 8-hour run and things like that, my feet have felt really good. I've had no rubbing, they've been really comfortable. The toe box is nice and wide, so my toes have had plenty of room, and in general I felt very supported. My legs have felt good. Like, I've not bounced back from those ultra runs very quickly, but they are my first ultras, but my legs have felt pretty good the next day. Actually, I do think you're getting a lot of support here from the combination of the ZoomX foam and the plate. Ticking through that 50k out in Wales, the shoe felt great for the whole of the run. It really was enjoyable to use. And then in the ultra I did here in Epping Forest, I used the Adidas Terrex Agravix Speed Ultra for the first 6 laps of a 10-lap 50 miler. So that was 30 miles in the Adidas and the last 20 in the Nike. Now, I did have a major blow up with 3 laps to go. So a lot of the time in the Nike, I was walking, shuffling, jogging, did 1 good lap in it. But, you know, even when you are really in a dark place on those long runs, it is a nice, comfortable shoe to have on. It's not annoying in any way when you are just staggering through to a finish line. And then when you are running a bit better, it does help you tick over nice and smoothly. Grip has also been really good for me. Like, I've not done any extended muddy runs, but on the long runs I've done, there's certainly been muddy patches and go through those okay. Going down nasty little descents on rocks and things like that, it feels like a shoe I'm very confident in compared to some of the other trail racing shoes, which we'll come on to, just because it is such a wide base and it's got that Vibram outsole. It sticks to things really well. It gives you a really broad platform to land on and feel confident that even when you are going fast downhill, you're not going to skid or slip or just be a bit narrow and miss your landing zone. So yeah, it is a very good shoe for that. I think, especially for someone like myself who's not the most confident descender, who's not a very experienced trail runner, it does give you, I think, a lot of confidence going down those hills. And the grip has been good on grassy stuff, things like that. It's also comfortable on the road because the lugs aren't too deep. So it does work in a really nice wide range of terrains. That Vibram outsole is certainly a big step up on what we've seen before from Nike, and it felt so much more confident in this shoe running around Wales and occasionally on wet rocks or in Chamonix on wet routes, wet rocks, compared to how I would have felt in things like even the Zagama, the Pegasus Trail 4. So yeah, certainly a big upgrade. Still not a soft ground running shoe. Like, if you're here in the UK, long spell of the winter coming up, like, that outsole just isn't going to bite through mud really very well. But for most terrains, you're going to be very good. And if you're on a very long distance ultra run and a big mix of terrain, you can certainly rely on the grip to handle pretty much everything that's thrown at you. The thing I say is the width of the forefoot in particular can be a bit disconcerting at times, because it is a very wide forefoot and it is much wider than my foot. And when I'm on the run, if I'm looking over my shoulder to try and see if I'm road crossing or something like that, I did often kick my other ankle with my right foot, just because it's a bit wider than I expect. And you can sometimes catch the edge of things when you are running that you're not expecting to land on, just because it is so much wider than your foot. But it is something you get used to. It's not been a big problem, but it doesn't feel like a very nimble shoe. When I was going through, like on the ultra route we did, there was one nice little single track through the forest where you're on like a rooty section. And if you're really going to bomb it down that, this doesn't feel that nimble. But when I was running quite slowly through it, it was perfectly fine. Also, I would say the last note, it's a very nice cushion shoe to have in a rotation, in that it does work quite well on the road as well. So it's a nice shoe you can use for lots of different things. Obviously, that's not what it's designed for. You're not going to go and spend the big money this shoe would cost to have it as a nice cushion shoe just to go for easy runs, but it's an added bonus to it. I think it's going to be a fairly long-lasting shoe, and you can poodle around in it very nicely as a general trainer, which is not true of quite a lot of trail shoes.
Okay, so into that run test, I'll hold my hand up. I have not run an ultra in the shoe. So what I've tried to focus on doing is put in as much time on my feet as I can in the shoe, you know, based on my kind of current state of fitness. So I've maxed out kind of a couple hours in the shoe. I've tried to do a mix of terrain. I've tried to do some kind of more tempo elements in those runs as well. See how the shoe can handle some quicker stuff. Ultimately, what I would say is this is a shoe that, I mean, it's not super aggressive. It isn't a shoe that you're going to run super quick in. It doesn't really feel built for that. You know, obviously it's got elements from Nike's kind of road running shoes that are built for kind of speed. I don't think that's what you're going to get here from the shoe. What I would say is you're getting something, first and foremost, that is very stable, and I think that's down to this kind of wider kind of base that you're kind of getting here in this shoe. I think with some Nike shoes, maybe they do kind of sit a little bit more narrow, particularly in my experience. But also you're getting something, I think, what you're getting from this midsole, you're not getting something super bouncy, as I said, not massively lively, but I think you're getting something that's very comfortable. I think offers enough to make the ride feel, you know, nicely enjoyable over a longer period or longer distances. And it just feels kind of well protected, I think, ultimately. It feels very smooth, feels very stable, as I said, and ultimately it felt consistent throughout my runs. Now, I've run in the Nike Wild Horse, which is obviously another kind of ultra focused runner shoe built for longer distances. I would say the midsole feels a little bit more flat, a little bit more boring. I think maybe that shoe is a bit more protective, particularly in the kind of upper department and those elements you're getting in terms of protection, where I think it's a little bit lighter on the Ultrafly. And I think in terms of the terrain it's designed for, probably, you know, not super technical terrain ultimately. But I think in terms of this shoe compared to the Wild Horse, I do think this feels a lot nicer, a lot more comfortable, a little bit more enjoyable to run in this shoe, and you know you're kind of running and getting through those trails nicely. I think another part of this is the outsole. Now, it's something we've been critical of on Nike shoes in general, or trail shoes, is the outsole hasn't been fantastic, or, you know, seeing Nike move to using a kind of Vibram mega grip outsole, which is on a lot of very good trail shoes. It's good to see that Nike has done that, and it makes sense. It's one of the best outsoles for trail running. And in terms of this outsole, it's not massively, in terms of lugs and the depth of lugs you're getting here, it's not huge, but it gives you enough traction, I think, or better traction than what you generally get on Nike shoes. It means it works well on road as well, and pavements, so if you have to mix up some road time, I think this can handle that as well, and it has done for me pretty well, and it doesn't offer any discomfort from that point of view. So you've got that really strong outsole. I think from a midsole point of view, you get something that's stable, nicely cushioned, smooth, feels consistent throughout those kind of longer kind of runs that you're going to do in it. Maybe you can slightly pick the tempo up in this, but I think the weight counts against it ultimately from that front. But I have liked running in the Ultrafly. I think compared to the Wild Horse, I think it's a nicer shoe, and it's a shoe that I think you can go long in as well too, and offers you a slightly different experience from a shoe like that ultimately. So yeah, isn't this a super aggressive speed kind of, you know, Vaporfly for the trails, but ultimately it is a shoe that I have liked running in. I think it is well suited to running long in, definitely coasting and cruising over those longer distances. And now you've got this kind of outsole that is much better than what we've seen on Nike's kind of other trail shoes, and an upper that I think is, you know, nice and kind of breathable and roomy up front here particularly, and one that mostly I've got on with, and I think it's a very good shoe. It's just maybe not the shoe that people hoped maybe it would be, but I think if you can look at it from the point of view where it does work really well, then I think it's a shoe that a lot of people will like, and I definitely think it's a nice addition to Nike's trail lineup too. So
the run test, these shoes really are fast. They feel a lot more stable than I would say that definitely the Vaporfly, 100% the Ultrafly. They've got that kind of real stability when you're, and they really come into their own. They're quick on kind of a gravel path. I've worn these a lot in Bushy Park on the kind of gravelly paths and light trail. I think when you get to more technical trails, you still really get the stability that you haven't got in a lot of other kind of racing trail shoes we've seen on the market. I think a lot of the other trail shoes where they're designed for racing, I just feel like I'm going to break my ankle when I run in them, but I didn't get that with this shoe. And I think that is massively down to the Vibram outsole, which we're probably all going to bang on about. But I think up till now, for me, I've loved the look of Nike trail shoes. I think they're always the best looking trail shoes on the shelf on the market, but they've never had the amount of grip that I want. And I think as soon as it gets a little bit wet or a little bit kind of slippy, the peg trail and shoes like that just haven't had enough grip. Enter the Vibram outsole. It's fantastic. I've not had any issues with slipping with the shoe, even on kind of wetter days. It's just been brilliant. Really got more stability than other Nike trail running shoes, and I really hope it's something that they roll out across their entire line of trail running shoes. The ZoomX midsole with the carbon fibre plate, you're getting a lot of bounce. It's definitely a little bit more flexible, so it's not as firm as the road racing shoes, which kind of helps with the stability on the trail. But it's fast, it's fun, it's an amazing shoe to run in, and I've absolutely loved running in it. So my verdict is always really hard recommending a shoe that's this expensive, but I think if you are looking for a trail running shoe to race in, this isn't a shoe to buy for your park runs, for your kind of, unless you're racing a park run of course, but this isn't a shoe to wear on your dog walks, on your day-to-day trail runs. This is a racing shoe. It's the equivalent of buying the Vaporfly or the Alphafly in my point of view. But if you are looking for that equivalent, you're looking to really speed up and you've got a trail race on the horizon, this is an amazing running shoe. I felt really secure, really comfortable from run 1 in this shoe, and it is one of my favourite trail running shoes ever. It is impressive, it does live up to the hype in my point of view, but it is expensive, so it definitely won't be for everyone. But yeah, really impressed by this shoe.
So certainly as a newcomer to long distance trail running this summer, the Ultrafly suited my needs really, really well. It's a very comfortable shoe, stable, protective, worked well for someone who's taking their first steps in the ultra distances, but I don't think it's really a standout shoe necessarily in this area. And also I think what it's best at, it's maybe a slightly niche shoe given the high price you have here. It doesn't have the versatility for me anyway in terms of the race distances I'd use it for. If I was going to go and run a shorter trail race, even up to a half marathon, maybe even a marathon, I probably would look at a lighter, more aggressive shoe than the Ultrafly. Like, it is very comfortable, but I don't think it gives you as much oomph as some of the other trail racing shoes out there, which we'll come on to, or even just a lightweight trail shoe that you could use for shorter races. So does position it quite firmly in the ultra distance camp for me, and even within that camp there's lots of competition. You know, I've tested a lot of trail super shoes this summer, as it happens they've all been getting launched this summer, and the Ultrafly does stand up really well against them at the ultra distance level, I'd say, because it is so comfortable, so supportive, gives you a little bit of bounce, but yeah, maybe doesn't have the versatility of some of the others, and it has a very high price tag, which is going to make it less appealing to lots of people. I also think it will be a bit of a shock if you come to it expecting something like the Vaporfly, because it isn't like that at all. It is not that aggressive, I'd say. Like, it is a good shoe and it's a comfortable shoe, but it is not that wow feeling of stepping into it and bouncing along. And that's true of a lot of the trail, super shoes. Like, they do have to make necessary changes to make them more stable, to not produce that wow factor. But one shoe I think that does on the trails a little bit more than the others is the Adidas Terrex Agravic Speed Ultra, which isn't out till spring 2024, but the shoe I've been testing, the prototype model, I think is pretty much what the final model will be when it goes on sale. And that is a shoe that I think captures a lot more of the feeling of a road super shoe. You've got a very aggressive design, really aggressive rocker. You've got Light Strike Pro midsole with just basically no concessions made to being on the trails, and some energy rods in there. So very narrow design at the heel, big wide forefoot. It's a shoe that really wants to run fast, and it feels really good running fast at. So I've done like hard training sessions in that shoe that I would normally do in a carbon road shoe, and they feel really good in a way that the Ultrafly wouldn't, I'd say. Like, it feels much more of a cruiser. However, I did find that the Adidas Terrex Agravic Speed Ultra was great in the first half of that Ultra. Like I said, I did 30 miles in it, 50k run in it, and it felt superb throughout. Really ticked over really smoothly, felt fantastic running at a nice relaxed pace despite the really aggressive design. I do still think the Ultrafly is a slightly more accessible shoe, and if I was someone who was first time in my life going out and starting to learn how to do some technical tracks, doing a bit more mountain running, I think the Ultrafly is a really good option for that, because it is so stable and wide and accommodating, whereas the Terrex feels a bit more aggressive. Same time, the Terrex hasn't really come unstuck on my trails. If you're on more runnable stuff, I think it's the more impressive all-round trail racing shoe. It's faster than the Ultrafly. It is a shoe I think would work well for short distance events, although another option in this category I think maybe works even better for those short events and is a lot cheaper than a lot of these shoes is the Asics Fuji Speed 2. So this is another shoe that takes a lot from Asics' road lineup, particularly the Magic Speed 3 shoe, and it's a lot lighter and cheaper than these other shoes I've been talking about, like the Adidas, like the Nike. It's got a firmer ride, it's got a very rockered ride, and if you're on pretty runnable trails, it feels very fast. You can really turn your feet over in it really well. I think it's probably, of all the shoes I'm going to talk about in this next couple of minutes, that's the one I'd use if I was going to go and run a fast 5k on like forest trails around me, which aren't very technical. There's not massive climbs and descents. I do think the Asics is a little bit narrow, and maybe would be a bit of a worry for me, again, going on more technical stuff. That wouldn't be the case for lots of experienced trail runners, but again, that's where the Ultrafly maybe comes in, because it is such an accommodating shoe, and I did feel very confident running on it on more technical tracks than I'm used to. But the Fuji Speed is a bit of a bargain, and I'd say certainly one to look at if you want to play a trail shoe. It's one I'd get. I think it's the one that will work the best for the majority of people. If you are looking at ultra distances, lots of mountain stuff, then there's probably more of a benefit to the shoes like the Adidas or even the Nike. But if you are on more regular trails, more undulating trails, the Fuji Speed's cheaper, it's lighter, I think it's a bit quicker. I think it's a really good racing option. Some other ones we'll go through. The Tecton X2 has been around for a while. Tecton X2 is just a really well-balanced all-round shoe. It doesn't have the same dynamic midsole that you've got from the Nike or the Asics or even the Adidas shoes. They've got slightly more impressive foams in there, but it feels very grounded, feels very stable. You do get a little bit of pop from the plate in there, and it can handle, I think, pretty much any distance, any terrain. It does feel like a really accomplished all-round trail trail shoe, if you're someone who's going to do loads of different trails over the course of a year, race lots of different distances, the Tecton X2 is probably the one to get, I'd say. It'd be better than the Nike for short stuff and very similar in performance to it over long distances, but you don't get quite as much from the midsole as you do from other shoes. New Balance SC Trail, I've just started testing. That's got an even higher drop than Nike. It feels a little bit odd. It's got a very close fit as well. So that's one thing definitely to worry about the New Balances. My first run after the Ultra, I've got a bruised big toe. I went out and ran in the SC Trail and it was a very close fit on that toe and I didn't enjoy that. But it's a slightly weird feeling shoe because it is so narrow, got such a high drop. It does feel very snappy and fast, but the Nike's more accommodating and comfortable, I'd say, if you're looking at ultra distances. Do some more testing with the New Balance Trail there, but yeah, I think that's probably how it will more or less line up. The North Face Summit Vective Pro is another ultra focused shoe for me with a cruisy, rockered feel. It didn't really work for me because the wing of the carbon plate on the front of the shoe did rub my foot, so I couldn't really use it for long distance runs. I think it's a very nice shoe, very comfortable shoe. I think it's got quite a lot of similarities actually to Nike in lots of ways. It might come down if you prefer that rockered, slightly lower drop ride from the North Face to the slightly higher drop feel of the Nike, which I probably prefer myself. And there's a Saucony Endorphin Edge shoe that's been around for a while. I think it's overlooked a lot, but I think it's a really good shoe. Again, I think it's similar to the Tecton X2 for me in that it is very well balanced, it's stable, it works on lots of different trails. It's probably got a little bit more bite than most of the other shoes on soft ground, even if I still wouldn't go on very deep mud in it for long periods. And I do think it's a good all-round shoe. I've also got the Endorphin Rift into test, which hasn't got a plate, but looks like a nice shoe as well. But yeah, those shoes get overlooked a bit, but I think if you can get a good deal on the Edge, I think it will perform just as well, probably even better than the Ultrafly, especially for short stuff. And then, like I say, Ultrafly I think comes into its own over ultra distances. The Edge is not quite as comfortable, but it's quite close between them, so probably get a fair bit of a bargain there compared to the Ultrafly, which is so expensive. And if you're looking at shorter races, I certainly, personally, wouldn't be looking at trail shoes with a plate. I think for most mixed terrain races, I'd rather be in a very lightweight shoe like the Hoka Zinal or the Merrell Skyfire 2. I've been testing a little bit as well lately. Just, you know, if you're going to go and run on ground that isn't necessarily going to be very hard on your legs for long periods, that's the fastest shoe I'd like to use on the trails. In general, carbon plate shoes for the trails have a slightly different niche, I think. I think it is best on those really long events when you have got a mixed terrain. You have a lot of hard stuff, lots of runnable ground where you are going to get a bit more pop back from the plate than in the UK, when for most of the year it's going to be a bit too muddy to really enjoy much of that. So that's why I prefer a lightweight shoe, but certainly really loved using the Ultrafly this summer. And although it's not necessarily a shoe I'd tell lots of people to go and dash out to buy, I think the Adidas is the more impressive trail super shoe, and the Fuji Speed's a bit of a bargain all round and better probably for most people's uses. If you are lining up ultramarathons, it's a fantastically comfortable shoe that does work on a good range of terrains, very stable, very comfortable, ticks over fairly well, but isn't quite a Vaporfly for the trail, so don't come in looking for that.
Okay, so my verdict on the Nike Ultrafly, and I have to say, when I picked this up, when it arrived with me, I definitely felt like this was going to be a shoe that was going to be a shoe built for speed and a shoe built to kind of run quick over long distances. I don't think that's what I got here, or that's what you get here with the Nike Ultrafly. What I would say, it is a shoe it's designed to go long, and it will give you something that feels comfortable to run long in, but ultimately something you kind of cruise in, and you know, not particularly, I would say, on massively technical trails. But if you were looking for a Nike trail shoe that can offer that, then that's definitely what you're going to get here. I don't think, for me, that carbon plate is, I'm not sure how much it's adding. I think mainly, you know, it's really about what you're getting in terms of the outsole, in terms of the fit of the upper. I think that ZoomX midsole just gives you enough in terms of protection, and also something that feels a little bit kind of more comfortable than what I would say something like the Nike Wild Horse kind of offers in terms of longer distances. I think with that shoe, compared to this shoe, I think that's got more protective elements in terms of the upper. I think it's got more aggressive outsole that maybe lends itself to working on slightly more technical terrain. But I think the midsole and the feel of that shoe is a little bit more bland, I would say, a little bit less exciting than what you're getting on the Ultrafly. And I think, you know, while that is built for good, you know, longer distances as well, and offering that protection and comfort, I think ultimately you're maybe getting something a little bit more enjoyable here on the Ultrafly. With that being said, though, I think there's probably similar shoes that kind of give you that same experience, and maybe for a little bit less money. I think if you know, I think about shoes like that I've really liked, things like the Hoka Speed Goat Fire, which I think again offers some more protective elements in terms of, you know, going out on the trails, offers you something that you can cruise in, but ultimately pick up the pace a little bit in as well. It's got a good outsole on there as well too, and I think, is this a better shoe than that? I'm not necessarily convinced, but I think in terms of Nike's collection and adding another shoe that's designed for longer, kind of longer off-road runs and also can handle some road running as well too, I think this is a good addition, and maybe this may end up kind of replacing something like the Wild Horse 4, or offering something, that's almost a step below that in terms of some elements. But I say I have enjoyed running in the Ultrafly. Is it the shoe that I expected it would be? No, but I think if you use it in the right way, then I do think you get here a really good looking Nike shoe, which is what we expect, but one that offers something that's stable, offers a smooth and consistent ride, I think offers comfort over longer distances. And yeah, I think it's a good addition to Nike's trail shoe collection, which I think can be a bit hit and miss at times. I think, I use the Nike Pegasus Trail a lot. That's not really a shoe like this or designed for the same types of runs. But I think, this adds another off-road option in Nike's range that I think works very nicely and will work well for a lot of people. It's just, if you were looking for that kind of super aggressive, quick shoe or trail shoe, this isn't what this is. But I think if you can see it for what it is and what it can do well at, then I think you'll get a good running experience out of it off-road, and also doing a little bit of road stuff in it as well too.
Well, that's our review of the Nike Ultrafly. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Have you been using the shoe? Have you been enjoying the shoe? Please do like, subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.